Alrighty, so you have finished your final draft at this point, and you are ready to actually start creating your equations for your lines. So before we go any further and you just dive in, I wanted to talk about how to set up your work page so that it is going to be the neatest, most efficient piece of paper that I can follow, you can follow, and that will get you a good grade on this project. So, kind of revisiting our expectations, we've already talked about this hand-drawn graph. You should already be done with that really at this point. You've already checked in with me. You've already drawn your final copy. We're moving on to the equations, work, and Desmos component, right? And again, you'll notice this is 50 points of your grade, half of your grade. So the first bullet point says, all calculations shown for each line for each form, which we'll talk about the forms in a second. And then obviously your digital image has to match. You have to have all three equation forms, et cetera, work attached to the back of the poster, work neatly organized, right? These are the three things: the calculations shown, the work attached, and work neatly organized. That's what we're going to talk about right now. So we did this with our pine tree example, where we talked about creating a workspace that is organized and shows line by line the calculations and work that we are doing to create our equations in slope, intercept, point slope, and standard form. So I don't have an example of a project up here, but I'll just kind of make this up as I go. For your work page, you give it a title of some sort if you want to, but what's important is that you have it organized by line number, okay? So you're going to start obviously with line 1. And when you start with line 1, you need to write down your given information. So that could be a variety of things. You have to have the slope first, so let's say that it was like 2/3 or something. Then you have to either have, on this next line, either a point or the y-intercept if you have it. So if you have the y-intercept, it'll look something like 0, 9 or something, right? But if you don't, let's skip down a little bit, pretend we have a line 2 here. It would look something like, oh, my slope is 1/4, and I only have the coordinate of -3, 9, okay? But you have to show me that given information that you're going to use to create your equation, okay? Now for line 1, going back up to the top, when you have the slope and you have the y-intercept, it's a real quick process to just write your equation. Y equals 2/3 x plus 9, right? But in the second instance, where we don't have the y-intercept, it's going to take a little more work. You're going to have to use point slope form. So we're going to have y minus 9 equals 1/4 x minus a -3, so it's plus. Then you'll have to do your distribution, and then move your 9 back over to the other side. So y equals 1/4 x plus, I'm just going to say 9 3/4 to keep it easy. Okay? And that would get you to slope-intercept form. So notice the difference between the work I showed for line 1 and the work I showed for line 2. There is a difference, right? The first one didn't really require that much work, but the second one did. What's important is that you realize if your entire paper looks like line 1 up here, that means that you probably did something wrong, because I think every picture I've checked has had lines that do not go through the y-axis, okay? So when I flip through your work page, I should see both of these examples. Some where you have point slope, some where you didn't need it, but no matter what, every line should be labeled with the line number, the given information, here and here, and then either your work or your equation if it's an easy step, okay? So let's just talk really briefly about Hoy and Bucks. Let's say our third line in this imaginary project that I have was a Hoy. Well, again, your given information can literally just be the word Hoy, because your slope is going to be 0 no matter what, and you may or may not have a y-intercept, and you may or may not have a point that you really need to look at. So if you just have the word Hoy, honestly, that's good enough for me. Then the y tells you to write the equation. Over here, you don't need point slope form. You're just going to write y equals whatever that number is. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 3, maybe it's -20, whatever you want to have. Okay? Same with Bucks. Maybe line 4 is a vertical line. You can literally just write the word Bucks, and then x equals and whatever number it is. Okay? So I'm kind of building for you right here what your work page would look like. Now, I know that some of y'all like to jump around, and you don't necessarily want to go in order and work through line 1, then line 2, then line 3. Maybe you want to go through and do all the hoys and buxes right off the bat. That's totally fine. However, you have to prepare for this, okay? So when you're creating your work page, when you're setting it up, you may have to do something like this, where you just give yourself space and number every single thing out all the way down, so that at any point you could jump around. So you've got line 1, 2, 3 labeled there. Maybe you want to start with line 3. So you go ahead and fill that out first. I'm just making this up. Whatever. And you start doing your work. But what needs to be in place is that all the lines need to be worked out or need to be set up in order. So that if you have a question for me and you say, I'm really having issues with line 82, we're not flipping through thousands of pages searching for line 82. It is very easy for me to say, okay, well, let's flip right to it. Here's your 80s, there's line 82. Let's work. So make sure you are setting up your page in advance so that you know where all of your work for every line should be. Okay? Here's some examples of some work pages of kids that I've had in the past, just to show you again kind of what we're looking for. My handwriting isn't even as good as this girl's handwriting, but you know, it's still really neat. This would be a good thing to shoot for. But she very clearly has her lines labeled over here, and they're in order. So if I wanted to know her issues on line 9, I would just flip through her pages, flip through her pages. Oh, here it is. This was the next page, line 9. Okay. This year, they actually wrote both of the points down, the end points of their lines. You don't have to do that step, but notice that she does have the slope every single time written out, and at least 1 point every single time. But you can look and see how many times she had to use point slope. She used it here, she used it here, she used it here, she used it here. And this was a great example of her showing that she understood how to use point slope form. But then she also has, like line 3 here, real quick, little bucks, x equals 9. Okay? So there's an example. Here's another one. This person felt like they were wasting paper, so they divided their paper in half vertically. So there's reads line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, line 6, and then at the same page, but at the top of the next column, line 7, line 8, line 9, etc. Either one of these are fine. It doesn't matter how you do it, as long as it is ridiculously neat to where you and I can navigate it super easily and we're not searching for all of your work. Alrighty? So that's how I'm expecting you to set up your work page. I would do this first before you get going on any of your equations so that you can kind of jump around if you need to.